Welcome back to The Simple Ask, the podcast where we cut through the noise to uncover how founders and business owners actually build their companies, all by asking the simplest questions. My guest today is Bijoy Sen, co founder and COO of Talentier and Oxlane Partners. Now, Oxlane Partners is a story for another day, and trust me, it really deserves its own episode. But today, we're really going to focus on Talentier only. Talentier isn't just another dev shop. They position themselves as a full spectrum software development partner covering everything from AI implementation and UX UI design to mobile apps, QA testing, and platform infrastructure. In this conversation, we get into how Bijoy manages to lead a team of over 1,000 people without compromising on quality, what software engineers actually need to do to stay ahead of the AI wave, and why he turned down a job offer from JP Morgan to build Talentia from scratch. Can you, in extremely simple terms, for someone like me who knows zero about software engineering, tell me exactly what Talentia does, who you do it for, and what your specific role is within that company?
Okay, so I'll start with my role. I am the co-founder and COO of Talentier. And what we do is we are a boutique AI consultancy firm. So we kind of pivoted from being a software development company to a more specialized, concentrated AI consultancy company, or rather firm. And what we basically do is we look at and we try to communicate with financial institutions, M&As, PEs, VCs, and we try to look at their systems, existing ones, processes, tasks, and we try to implement AI and automation so that, they're much more efficient and less time consuming because these kind of like financial institutions are not that tech savvy, if I put it like that. And they have a lot of different processes that are way too manual, way too manual, takes a lot of time, man hour. So our mandate, like internal mandate, is to make sure that these companies are as efficient as possible using automations.
And can you
Yeah.
give me an example of what some of those processes are, like they're a
Okay.
little bit outdated without AI?
Right. So, you know, very basic example. Let's say an M&A firm, right? Let's say they want to sell a company, right? They want a company to be acquired. And in that, and one of the processes involved is that, okay, they want to find buyers, potential buyers, right? So how do you source and enrich these like leads information, right? How do you do that? So one of the processes that they use, which is highly manual, is that okay, they look at public and private databases. All right, they put information like filters, geography, sort of revenue status, and if they have a history of buying these kind of companies. Let's say the company that they're trying to sell or that are trying to get acquired is a, let's say, a manufacturing plant, right? So the people that would be interested in buying must have a series of history of buying similar plants or being in the same industry, sort of, right? So they don't know that. And one of the ways that they do that they find this information is by looking at multiple different like LinkedIn accounts of that particular company or person, okay, and their websites, and basically scraping data off of the internet and doing it so very manually, right? That takes them, so the general deal size or the deal cycle for them is about 9 to 12 months. That's a lot of time. And in most cases, at the end of 6 months, the initial 6 months, they have no idea whether the people that they sourced even want to engage with them. Okay. So we suggested an AI solution, or rather, an AI ecosystem framework that basically takes in those leads list. We call them long list and does an intent analysis on them. Okay. So intent analysis would basically be the same thing that you would do manually, which is look at the LinkedIn website, all sort of data, and try to understand whether or not they would engage with your particular project, which is, the manufacturing plant. So yeah, that's basically one of the ways that we work with our clients. We try to understand their problem. We try to build custom solutions for them.
Why did you make that pivot? Like, what did you notice was not working in your first business model
Okay.
when you were
It's
just doing
not about
software?
right. It's not about not working, but rather we wanted to be an AI native company ourselves. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of different internal processes that needed to be automated because we also, just like any other company, spend a lot of time, man hour doing stuff that an AI automation would do in a split second. Okay. So internally we had that like revelation that okay, if we need it, multiple other companies would do as well. Okay. And that's not saying that we don't do software development at all. Okay. We do it, but our focus is on AI automations and helping companies become AI native sort of.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. Now, just going back a bit further, like how did you come up with the idea of starting this company? Like you're at university, you're just a normal student. Why did you decide to start this?
Okay. Well, if I want to give you a very deep answer, I would have to probably go back to my dad. Okay. So, he has been in a company. Obviously, I'm not gonna name the company, but he has been in a like senior position in that particular company, and he worked there for almost like 30 years. Same company, 30 years. So that's something we, in our age, would never even imagine. Okay. So he spent 30 years in that particular company, but the only thing is that when he left, sort of, because he retired, he left with nothing. And nothing being, you know, whatever he did for that company was for that company, right? So when he left, he had nothing. Okay. I'm not talking about money, but like, that company was let's say, pharmaceutical company, and he worked for them. He did a lot of stuff. He brought in value, but at the end, when he retired, he came back with nothing. He just came back just the way he entered, right? So that kind of hit me, and I went through a lot of like realizations and trial and errors along the way because I had the opportunity to join JP Morgan as a software engineer, and I was like I faced this problem that okay, so if I get into the corporate sort of career, it's gonna be one, it's gonna be very hard for me to come back, and two, I would not have the opportunity or I would not be able to take the risk that I'm taking right now, which is, you know, working for my own company, right? So these kind of like revelations kind of, pointed me towards making something that I can call my own, you know. Every single stuff that I do, because it's literally like 12 a.m. midnight in Hong Kong, right? I was in Sweden a few months back, but anyway, so this is what we do, right? I'm working on it, but at the end of the day, I can say that, okay, this is mine. I'm working for my clients. I'm helping them build something that they would use for years and years to come. So that sort of like um, thing gives me the hit, that, okay, I want to pursue this.
Is it for you just building something of value, or are you also somewhere looking for recognition that at the end of your career, let's say when you retire, do you want to be known for doing this? Like, what's the goal?
Okay, deep questions. All right. So obviously, the goal is to be known for someone who helped companies, become AI first, or rather help companies grow and transform in an AI manner, right? So that's definitely one of the goals and one of the ways that I want to take an exit out of it, if I put it like that. Yeah.
Another interesting thing I found was that you're doing a bachelor's in electrical engineering, it says on your
Right.
LinkedIn, but
Right.
everything you seem interested about or you're building is software engineering related. So why the mismatch? Like why not
Okay.
just do software engineering from the get-go?
Right. So, engineers, we are a fun breed of creature. All right. We kind of crave stuff that we don't know. So we like engineers are, you know, very famous of having the unknown problem, which is okay, you don't know what you don't know, but you have that sort of passion for solving stuff, which is why I chose engineering. And, when I was very, very young, I started working on like Arduinos. I'm not sure if you're from an engineering background as well,
No,
but okay.
far
So
away.
Arduinos, right. So Arduinos are basically small microcontrollers that you can use to build like small projects, DIY projects. So my first hands-on experience with, pseudo engineering was through that particular thing. Yeah, some might call it a toy as well. And I loved it. Okay. I love building something that has a real value. So I'll give you a very, very like, might be stupid, but an example. So when I was in, I think grade 7 or 8, when I was studying in my room, I used to, go out for a couple of different reasons, maybe go to my brother's room or, anything, right? And I would leave my fan and lights in my room on for like, I don't even know how long. And my parents would be like, hey, just make sure that you turn these off, brown parents, Asian parents. So they are kind of like tripping on these stuff. So they're like, okay, why don't you just, be a bit more careful and turn these off when you're not in your room, We could save electricity and in turn, save the planet because they're like very sustainably focused. So that bothered me a lot because I wouldn't remember, turning my electricity off in my room and then go do other stuff. So I devised this relay, rather a motion detected relay that would turn off everything in my room when I was not in my room. Okay. And it was just a very simple set of components that I bought, saving my own lunch money. Yeah. And wired them up. I was super scared because that was the first time I was working on AC, which is, the main grid. It's not DC like batteries, so it's much more dangerous, right? So you'd have to connect your AC line with that particular relay so that whenever you're not in the room, not in motion, everything would turn off. So it's like, one of the very stupid stuff that I did in my time. And I can proudly say that I have, you know, destroyed a lot of circuit breakers in my house, gladly. But yeah, that's sort of like the first part of it, which is getting into engineering. And also the reason that I'm not sticking to engineering right now, which is that I've had my years, you know, and traditionally engineers are like, at least in my university, engineers are taught more on the theory side, which I don't necessarily enjoy that much. I know, other engineers watching might, you know, hate me for it, but it's like I like having a very good balance between theory and also practicality. And we have a lot of different labs, but it's just that I felt like along the way I lost the passion because I had that era. So when I mentioned art, right, most of my friends, when they were doing, let's say, electrical, not let's say electronics, the course for the first time, they saw an Arduino for the first time in their lives, right? But I was introduced to that piece of hardware almost like 6 to 7 years before. So I knew everything about it. So in most classes, I was like pretty bored because the teacher would tell me or rather teach me stuff that I already knew. Not saying that there are not a lot of other different like deep dives you can do. Obviously you can, but the gist of it, I knew. Okay. So that sort of pushed me towards learning something new, which is software. And because I did a lot of coding as well when I was young. I learned Python when I was, let's see, 12 years old or something. So I had that knowledge and I wanted to pursue that a bit more. So I looked into software development, learned JavaScript, a different bunch of libraries, all of those stuff. And then came AI, machine learning and AI, right? But that was like the other pivot that I made personally in my life that okay, there's software engineering. I have a pretty good understanding of it. Let's look into AI, right? So that all, the passion driven ideologies shifted in my career as well. And my yep.
Interesting. You're like honestly every brown parent's dream, basically. Just go into engineering
I
super
wish.
early.
I wish.
Man, you're the neighbor's son, basically, that everyone gets
I
compared
am.
to, essentially. So I'm going strong. Uh, Okay, so zooming in on Talentier again,
Yeah,
I saw also that you work with both startups and enterprises, which can seem like
yeah.
two completely different entities. So, how do you even balance those different needs that they have? And also, I'd like to know, I know you can't use numbers, but what percentage of your revenue comes from each of these?
Okay. So the startup angle that we had was from a very initial understanding of the market. Okay. And it's not to say that we don't work with startups. We definitely work with startups, but in a different capacity. For example, I have this event on 23rd of July, I think, with I'm not sure if you know Founders Institute. It's like one of the biggest NGO that connects founders all around the
Okay,
world.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they invited me over. So Founder Institute's Hong Kong chapter invited me over to talk to a few like fellow founders, try to understand how we can, implement AI in our stuff, you know, in the process. Let's say someone wants to pitch to an investor, but they have no idea how the investor would act, or they have maybe for them it's one of the first times they're even meeting an investor, right? So how do you talk to them? So I suggested building a bot, a very simple bot that can train you to talk to an investor, ask you the hard, difficult questions. So those are the sort of like angle that we have with startup owners, startup founders, try to be in the space as well, but also engage with them. And in terms of enterprise deals, we mostly do enterprise deals right now. And the reason being, because we're looking at the States and Europe as a client base, and the most significant client bases as well. So being in Hong Kong, it's a bit hard for us to, track down and focus on startups elsewhere. We don't have that sort of connection in that space. But we do have a lot of warm connections into multiple different financial agencies and firms and companies, such as VCs, M&As in these particular regions. So we're focusing on that right now. Yeah.
That's very interesting because like AI is one of those things I just realized that you can really apply to any business. Like you can help anyone become more efficient with AI. It's almost like sales. Like you can give sales training to anyone, right? You don't need to focus on a specific market. So
Yeah.
that's super interesting. Um, Damn. And also, how do you price your different services? Like I saw you also help people make their MVPs and stuff. Do you have any specific pricing model you follow, or is it based on what client you're approaching?
Okay. Since we are a very service-based company, all of the pricing depends on how much time we provide in terms of consultants, like we as consultants, and also the development hard cost. Okay. So MVPs can range from, it's a very large range. I can't give you like proper numbers as well. Because the thing is, a company might come up to us and say that, okay, we want to build a POC, proof of concept, MVP, and take it to investors. All right. So it would depend, like the pricing would depend on how much functionality they want, right? Is it so? Let's say the full feature set is, around 10, all right? But for now, for the POC level, they want two. So the pricing would depend on that, right? So it's very variable. Like the hard costs would depend on how much time we provide as consultancy, and also the developer cost. Yeah.
Why, why do you think people approach you to design their MVPs instead of hiring their own team first? Like, why use a service-based agency almost to do that?
Okay. So if we're talking about MVPs, like specifically, the problem with companies that come up to us to build MVPs, or rather like talk to us to understand more about MVPs and POCs, they do not have the budget to build an in-house team to develop. Because think of it like this: if it's a mobile app, you'd need a front-end developer, you'd need a back-end, and also maybe like full stack developers and also project managers. So right there, you have 4 to 5 people that you need to hire, and that too full time, or let's say project based. Okay, where do you source them from? How do you talk to them and understand their specialties? You basically have to run a huge hiring process, try to understand, try to, section off and allocate budget for them, and also run your business, you know. So when we come into the picture, we take care of all of that. You just bring your mandate and your thesis to us and tell us that, okay, these are the stuff that we need, and we deliver for you.
You think once a company does have the budget to have an in-house team, in your opinion, is it a no-brainer to have an in-house team? Or in some cases, should they still approach someone like Talentier?
Okay. No, that depends. For example, it's if it's a non-technical company and the solution that they need is a one-off thing, right? So even if they have the budget, it doesn't make sense for them to get any house team, right?
Mm.
Let's say a biotech company, okay, and they mostly work on, finding cancer cells, just an example. But they want to build an app where basically patients can track their progress or the stages of cancer in their body. Very bad example, but just giving you an idea. So for them, it doesn't make sense to hire a full in-house team that develops that app. But because after that's done, what would the team do, right? What would they work on? But if it's a tech SaaS company, then it makes sense. Sure, you can get a service-based company to build your POC, your MVP, take it to the investors, get a few bit of money in, and then you hire full time, and then basically grow the team. That's fine, and that's usually what people do.
Sounds. And also, how large is your team right now? Because I might be speaking out of my ass, but and this might be so wrong, but I saw 1,000 plus members somewhere. Is that incorrect?
No, that's correct.
Holy shit.
So
Okay, how? Where
yeah,
are they
we
based?
have a worldwide team of project managers, developers, not just in the traditional software development space, but also AI engineers and AI analysts that work on delivering these AI solutions to these companies. So it's all worldwide in different countries, mostly on project basis. Yeah,
And you started Talent here how many years ago?
it's almost 2 years now. Yeah.
Okay, so in 2 years, how do you go from just you and your co-founder to more than 1,000 people?
Okay, so we try to keep the team agile, so we don't get people full time. So
Okay.
when people when people see 1,000 people, they might think that okay, they have 1,000 in-house
Mm.
people or an in-house team of 1,000 people, right? So that wouldn't make sense for companies like us, like especially in this time, because most successful companies are the ones that are agile, okay, and lean. And the reason being, we don't want to deal with HR and issues that come up with an in-house team. Okay. So what we did was we partnered with multiple different companies that house these sort of developers. So that's how we initially started, to gain more traction and to expand aggressively. For example, Vietnam has a lot of different clinics, software development clinics that have uh, developers in all sort of levels, experiences and expertise. So we partnered with them initially to deliver solutions through them, and they would provide dedicated project manager for each project. So that's fine. But then we understood that, okay, since we're getting a few clients in and we're making money, we have a, like revenue generated. What we did was we had multiple different sort of network set up in Discord that, okay, let's say for Vietnam, we have about 200 people in that particular network. I would reach out to them and create a team then and there that would work on a particular thing. Because, we like to divide the team in terms of expertise. So if we need a front-end engineer, we have, multiple different engineers all around the world, and we would section them off in terms of priority, right? If a company needs a very sweet looking UI, okay, so we're gonna section off a very good UI UX designer for them. Okay. But let's say a project requires a website design, but they're not that privy or that selective on the UI UX process. But we still need a UI UX designer. So we might choose someone with a bit less experience, So that's basically how we expanded.
It's your core team then.
Okay. So the core team is just two of us, co-founders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And does it ever get difficult or challenging to manage these many people? Because I'm trying to understand the hierarchy over here, like who tells who to do what across different time zones as well.
Right. So the thing is, when we have multiple different projects overlapping at one given time, we make sure that we have dedicated project managers handling these sort of projects. Okay. So if we have a development project and we also have an AI consultancy project. So when it involves consultancy, like the co-founders, both of us, and some of our advisors. So advisors, I wouldn't put in the core team, they're advisors. So we have a lot of advisors as well. So we would, like the team composition would have analysts, AI analysts, and consultants, us, and the advisors. And we take that team to go like to basically cater to the AI offer for the AI offer to any sort of firm, right? And for any sort of traditional software development job, it's much more simpler. You just assign a project manager, and you have multiple different developers under that project manager, and we sort of have the top level view of who does what, what's happening, and how to guide them. You know? Yeah.
Like how do you trust that they're going to do a good job? Like what quality checks do you run and how do you even monitor them?
Okay. So for us to work, for us to work with them, we have a very, what's the word for it? Like holistic interview process, and not just interview. We look at their portfolio, where they worked before. We need references from past employers, stuff like that. So it's very comprehensive because we try to take the best of the best, you know. And once you do that, when you know that these guys are the best at what they do, and they're not kind of bullshitting and saying that, okay, I can do this, right? They're just saying that, okay, I can do this one particular thing. If you find me useful, just give me this particular work, right? So most of our, developers are like that. We know whose expertise is what and who is best at what, and we have like a sort of tiered down list of that. So we use that, like I said before, sectioning off and allocating time between each project. But yeah, having like knowing that, you know, whoever we chose are some of the best in their field gives us, it basically like saves a lot of time from our end doing like QA/QC. We don't have to check that often. But yeah,
And you do the hiring process yourself, you and your co-founder.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you also give me an example, maybe a recent example of someone you hired and you thought, okay, that's the person for us?
Okay, so we recently took about 5 interns
Hmm.
this summer. So I usually don't handle the interviews because so we set up the whole thing and my partner does the interviews and then we do like the sort of final check.
Hmm.
So the process was something like this. So in Hong Kong, the way it works is that you post in multiple different job boards and also like university job boards, job postings. So you do that and the job is circulated throughout, the students and the email. Sorry, and the emails. So we started getting a lot of responses, and we had a standardized form where people could, give their stuff, let's say CV, experience, uh, major stuff like that. And sort of after that, we created a list of because the initial step is to look at the CV, right? And we had an ATS system set up. So some of the CVs were scanned out of the ATS. I think we got around like 120 applicants. So we screened about, oh God, but it was, I think, about 30. Okay. And for each of these 30 people, based on their profile, and we have this, like, this is all automated, by the way. We have this setup that lets us know that, okay, based on this person's CV and all the information that they filled up, it might be interesting to ask them this particular question. So all the 30 people that like that we found, had different questions, and their task was to give us a 2-minute video on that particular topic. Okay, so video interviews are very well, like very good ways of knowing whether that person is suitable for your team, because the way that they speak, and most of our work, even that is most of our work that is not development based, is very like spoken. You have to talk to your clients, you have to understand their needs. You also have to be well spoken enough to make them understand your concerns, right? If I'm not being able to make you understand what I'm trying to say, I probably won't understand what you're saying as well, right? So it goes both ways, right? So we try to understand that whether they're going to be able to speak, because we wanted to have them shadow us in client calls. And in fact, in the meeting that I had just before, like what half an hour before, we had all the 5 interns in the meeting, and we wanted them to kind of get an idea of how like what we do in the market, in actual client meetings. So yeah, so the next step was to get them those like video interview stuff. So they did that, and we looked at the videos, and it's very apparent, and most people didn't make it through because they probably didn't understand the question, because it was a bit tricky, the questions, and none of them could coordinate as well, because all of their questions are different, right? So from that, we took sort of seven, not seven, like 10 people out, and then we had face-to-face interviews with them. And that face-to-face interviews were like a mixture of technical and non-technical questionnaire. Talk to them, basically see if we vibe as people as well, right? Behavioral stuff as well. And then we selected five. Yeah.
In those video interviews that you did, can you also give me an example of a question? Like, are you looking at how correctly they answer the question, or how um, innovative they are in answering that question, or how they communicate themselves? What are you looking at?
So we as consultants have to be very aware of what the client wants, even before we talk to the client. Okay? Because you as a consultant, you have to bring value to your client, or they're not gonna get your service, right? So we sort of gave them an idea that, okay, this is what we do, right? So we're gonna give you a scenario, and try to understand the scenario in a few words and speak about it, impromptu stuff. So we wanted to look at how good they are given in a particular like awkward scenario, and just trying to see how adaptable they are, you know? Yeah. Because it's very common, honestly, that clients will ask the most, like arguably the most random questions at any given time. And, you know, as a consultant, you have to have the context, like have to have enough context and knowledge about them to answer it properly, right? You can't say something random back, right? Even if the question is random.
Did that happen on the call before this one?
No,
Very random question.
US
Okay.
client, very like we have a very good like long lasting connection with them, so
Okay.
it was
Okay.
simple stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
are you still studying, by the way, or are you done with your degree?
No, I am still so I still have my FYP left.
What's an
Finally
F?
project.
What's an FIP? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you have one more year left,
Yeah, you could
or
say that.
okay, okay, okay. Honestly, now, how much time do you spend on your business, and how much time do you spend on actual academic stuff?
Uh I don't know if I can give you a number for it, but it's just that I learn stuff very fast.
Hmm.
So I don't need to spend a lot of time understanding concepts. So I just study before exam. That's it.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Respect that. Okay, now I think I only have two more questions left, but this one I've just come up with recently. Like, I was talking to my sister a few weeks ago, and she doesn't do anything software related, but she was giving me sort of big sister advice, and she's much older than me. She was like, you should do something with coding, or learn how to do some form of software engineering, because that automatically means that you're going to get paid higher. But in my like YouTube feed and Instagram, a lot of what I've been hearing is that software engineering jobs are at risk because of AI. So I felt like she was, like many other people, oversimplifying, like almost making it seem like it's dead easy to just be an average coder and make significantly more money. So do you think there's any truth to that, or is AI basically messing this all up?
Okay. Um, I get to talk to a lot of people in this space that have like who have been lifelong coders and software engineers in a very senior level, but are switching to, AI based workflows. And the one thing that they say is that, okay, so traditionally before AI was the next big thing, right? Traditionally you would have software engineers, junior software engineers, and then so it's like one, two, three. So software engineer level one, two, three, and then senior software engineer, and then you might graduate or rather promote that, like be promoted to an associate. Okay, so right now, what I like, it's my opinion by the way, which is the way that I see the world turning in terms of like software engineering, which is so most of the junior roles would not be there because their responsibility was to basically code the day-to-day stuff and to debug the day-to-day stuff. But right now, and especially after OpenAI's Codex, which is like very good tool, I should probably give it a try, is out. It seems like that particular job title would not be there. Okay. And what Codex basically does is that it takes a look at your entire code base. So if you know a bit about AI, the problem with like our current implementation of AI is that it has a lot of like it doesn't have enough context. Context meaning it doesn't know enough about you or your work to suggest a good enough solution. But in most cases, what we ask is ways like too general for it to not give a good answer, right? But if you look at like if you ask it to dive deeper into something that is very specific to you or your stuff, it's gonna hallucinate because it doesn't have enough knowledge and context about it. So that's where Codex comes in. It takes a look at your particular code base, which is your entire code, okay? And it uses like some very clever form of indexing, which is basically like understanding how to parse that code because obviously you can't take all of that code in one go because you don't have a lot of tokens. So it basically uses like very clever like memory management and cache management systems. And it takes a look at your code and understands it and tries to debug it if any possible bug arises automatically. Okay. So those sort of like junior roles, in my opinion, would not exist. And I think Mark Zuckerberg also said the same thing in the Joe Rogan's podcast, which is by the end of 2025, they're trying to move, you know, towards AI engineering, like AI as engineers, you know, not human engineers, basically. So those roles would not be a thing, and it's more so going to be agentic solutions that, okay, one agent is only working for debugging, the other agent is only for, let's say, coding or launching new features, right? The other agents handle PR and, sort of like a very clever agentic network. And then the hierarchy would look something like this. So the smaller agents and then a master agent that takes care of different stuff. So whenever a request comes in, the master agent takes that request and tries to understand that, okay, which particular smaller agent or rather like sister agents do I pass it on to? Okay. So that's a sort of like uh, way it's gonna go that I think, in my opinion. And the only place that not the only place, but like one of the places that human engineers would be needed is in making sure that these AI agents work perfectly, right? Being the sort of guide in making sure that they work properly as intended, right? So software development would not be the same traditionally as it was right now, like as it was before. And I was looking at this particular podcast. So this guy, I know this like British guy, he talks to homeless people in England. Okay.
Okay.
So I was looking at his podcast and he recently talked to a software developer. So this guy got homeless like maybe 6 months before. lost his job, and he was a JavaScript engineer, if I'm not wrong, senior JavaScript engineer and tech architect. So super smart guy. Just by the way he talks, you you would understand that okay, he knows his shit, right? So this guy was saying that okay, we lost our job basically because uh, of the whole restructuring thing. The companies are considering using agentic solutions and giving them a try because look, you have an agent that codes just as good as you as a human agent or a human being, human engineer, and you cost 1000x, 10,000x compared to this particular AI agent, right? So companies would not focus on you. So the next big wave of engineers would be AI engineers that know agentic solutions and can launch and debug agentic solutions itself. So you have those agents, but someone needed to code those agents, right? So you'd be the ones making those agents, right? That's how it's it. Yeah.
So then imagine that there's someone who's been a software engineer for the last 10 years, right? And he's in that position like this guy who was interviewed on the podcast. You can tell he's almost about to get laid off. What do you think he needs to do to quickly be able to adapt and become a human engineer?
Okay. That's like very hard to answer and is a bit subjective to their particular, scenario and consequences as well. Because if being laid off doesn't put as much pressure on him, as in he can look for something else, it probably wouldn't matter a lot. But if it does, I mean, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. So what I would have done is look into agentic solutions, MCP servers, automation, all the stuff that's basically booming, and that's literally all you can find in LinkedIn right now. People talk about automation, you can do blah blah blah, yada yada, all these stuff using automation. Most of it is actually true, you know. The possibilities are literally endless. So one of the biggest example is from my experience. So I was talking to so we were in a client call with a French client, and they were like very, what's the word for it? So they weren't believing in what we were saying, basically, because they come from a very non-technical background. And whatever we say kind of sounds like magic to them. Okay. And in a span of 5 minutes, I made an automation in front of him that takes in a very unstructured meeting note, hand taken meeting note, and summarizes it and emails it to the necessary person in that particular meeting. Okay, in 5 minutes. I made it in front of him. He was very impressed. But point being, the possibilities are endless with automation, agentic solutions, MCP servers. I would probably look into that.
Right. Now, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you, what's your long-term vision for Talentier? Where do you see the company in, let's say, 5 years?
Okay. We like to call ourselves the McKinsey of AI. Okay.
Mm.
So we want to be the McKinsey of AI, whereby people would come to us for agentic solutions and automations and AI, custom AI solutions, basically. Because we love working with people that understand the sort of value we bring in, you know. Because if I go back to that example for the leads sourcing, right? Something that takes about 9 months, 9 to 12 months, we could shorten that down to about a few weeks. That's value right there. Time is money. That's value right there, right? So we want to be a company that's very AI focused, helping other companies, becoming AI focused as well. And one of the ways that we have started doing it is through AI audits, which is basically understanding whether these companies can even implement AI, because AI is all about data. If you don't have a good data source, whatever you're building is not going to be good as well. OpenAI is so good because they have so much different context about the whole world, right? Because if you remember, a few years back, OpenAI's like GPT was constricted to like only to 2022, in terms of internet data. Only recently, I mean, it looks like it has been there for a long time, but it's very recent, by the way, that internet search thing, right? So now it has the whole internet as its knowledge, right? So your AI is just as good as your knowledge or the data that you put in, right? So we try to do these audits and try to figure out how we can implement AI into these companies. But yeah, the end goal is to become McKinsey of AI.